Welcome to Unit 6 of Week 2. I'm happy you're back. We are now in Unit 6, Process Implementation and Change Management. Before we start that, let's get started with a quick recap of our previous session on process redesign. If you remember, we talked about the elements of process redesign and its competitive performance dimensions. We then looked at examples of process improvement approaches and talked about the elements of SAP Signavio Transformation Suite that can support us at redesigning our process. We then clarified on a few terms and the high-level concept of automation, and finally covered the critical success factors of process redesign. So at this point, we have identified, discovered, analyzed, and redesigned our processes. We know exactly how the future state looks like and are excited about the great advantage it will bring about. We're only 3 steps away from seeing our new process perform: implementing technical changes, rolling out our new to-be process, and, most importantly, preparing the involved employees by running a proper change management campaign and training on the new process. The goal of process implementation is to have an implemented to-be process reflecting the future status and an educated and enabled workforce. Let's see what that means. So if I may remind you, SAP's transformation methodology includes transformation of processes and systems while keeping the people in the center. Keeping people in the center means involving key stakeholders and getting all other excited about the change. That is what change management is really all about. Yes, change management is communication, and change management is also training and enablement. But the ultimate goal is to create the positive excitement about the change. Okay. Before I get too excited about the topic of change management, let me quickly explain all 3 steps of process implementation. Again, we have designed a new process which now needs to be rolled out to the respective workforces and also our business partners. How this is done really is depending on the culture and nature of the organization and must be part of a communication campaign. The technical implementation usually is a project on its own. Ideally, systems are tested in a test environment, and after successful testing, they are moved to a productive environment. All technical rollout activities must be planned and coordinated to ensure a smooth transition. But all rollout and implementation efforts are useless if we don't prioritize the people aspect. We need to ensure that all stakeholders are prepared for the change and that employees are enabled, equipped, and empowered to do their new job right. I've seen a great number of implementation projects, and I can assure you, lack of change management was the #1 reason they failed. Believe it or not, as long as 3,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus was already convinced that everything is in a process of constant change. Well, was he right? And I guess we all agree that if we look at today's business world, change is a given, and the fast adopters take market share from the slow ones. Thus, change fitness is an essential skill to thrive for. Change and transformation is driven by a number of factors. To mention some, we have operational efficiency to optimize margins. We have environmental factors such as the climate change, strategic decisions to enter new markets, mergers and acquisitions, change in business models, or simply new expectations from our customers. These changes require continuous adaptation of how we do things within an organization. It is either change continuously or get disrupted in the new reality. Yet, our most precious transformation assets are our people, and we need to understand that not all people embrace the constant challenge of adapting to new processes, tools, and ways of working. In fact, There are just a small group of people who do. In fact, most employees will go through an emotional roller coaster when finding out about a change that affects their daily work. Instantly after the publication of a change, they experience a surprise or even shock. Then there's a phase of denial in which they try to search for evidence that the change is just a rumor. During this phase, it's important to run a profound communication campaign and inform stakeholders about the actual change. Recognizing that the change will happen and that there is nothing they can do about it, employees will experience frustration, followed by a small depression, which will result in loss of productivity and motivation. During that time, it's best to just observe, listen, and support. Then it's time to understand, explore, and test the new system or process, which will finally lead to an experimental phase. Ideally, employees will eventually agree that the change does have some advantages as well, and will develop an excitement about the implementation. I know that there are people who are open for change, and they will have a hard time agreeing to this concept, but I will give you an example and prove my point. Think of Christmas. It's time for new smartphones. Your 16-year-old nephew gets one, and your 70-year-old mother absolutely needs one and gets one too. How do they react? The same? Different? Oh, I think their reaction is going to be as different as it gets. Your nephew will get super excited. He can't wait to get it out of the box and find out all the new features about the new phone that the old one didn't have. Your mom or grandma will look at the box, hoping that it's really not what she thinks it is, and that you kept the receipt so she can exchange it. She has just gotten used to the basic features of her old phone and is not willing to learn about the new ones. Think about it, and think about your grandmother's reaction on the change curve. So change management aims at flattening the curve and reducing the time of frustration and depression. Some of its objectives are to reduce disruption by planning and communicating the change effectively. Change management also provides a structured approach for addressing resistance and engaging stakeholders. It helps to ensure that change is adopted successfully by all stakeholders and helps to identify, assess, and mitigate risks associated with every change. Also, change management helps to increase employee satisfaction, of course. And last but not least, change management is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process and improvement. By promoting a culture of continuous improvement, change management can help organizations to adapt to changing environments and stay competitive. As in all the previous sessions, let's take a look at the SAP Signavio solutions that can support our activities in process implementation. The 3 products I would recommend are, of course, the Process Collaboration Hub, SAP Signavio Governance, which turns business processes models into standardized workflows that can be rolled out across the organization. And it also helps to coordinate tasks and supports collaborative process governance. And of course, process automation, which can continue to support the newly implemented process. Let's talk a little bit about the success factors for implementation and change management. First of all, it is crucial to understand the resistance to change from certain employees. And to reduce that resistance, change management needs to be a priority. As part of the change management activities, train and enable employees on the new processes or tools so that they feel enabled to do their jobs in the future. Plan in sufficient time for rollout and implementation efforts, as things never run according to plan. And last but not least, foster process coherence to attain the desired improvement results. Now, let's wrap up Unit 6 with the key takeaways of the day. We first talked about the elements of process implementation, process processes, systems, and people. We then spent a long time explaining why change management is so important, which elements of the SAP Signavio transformation suite can support our implementation, and finally, we talked about some critical success factors of process implementation. I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I did, and I would like to thank you for listening in and hope to see you in our final session on process monitoring and controlling.